Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration, and connections from all flavours of Passive House, check out passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your questions answered, and contribute to the community dialogue. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passive House journey. We hope to see you at one of our weekly Passive House Accelerator live webinars. In the meantime, here's this week's Passive House podcast. Welcome back to the Passive House podcast. I'm Matthew Cutler-Welsh, coming to you from Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland in New Zealand.
And I'm Zack Semke, coming to you from Seattle, Washington.
How you doing, Zack?
I am good. I am glad that I don't live in North Carolina or Tennessee or the other communities that were hit by Hurricane Helen. Jay Fox, on our team, lives in Asheville, so he had a front row seat to all that destruction. It's pretty. There's an article. He just wrote an article for the Accelerator about it. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, and we have I'm not sure if it's still a state of emergency, but there was a red rain warning in Dunedin overnight. And apparently it was quite a strange event because it wasn't a violent storm, but they've had over 100 millimetres of rain in a very short period of time, and it's overwhelmed a lot of the stormwater there and has caused just flooding, quite a lot of flooding in some pretty populated areas. It kind of came out of the blue. It was just a big rain event over a day or so, and we've seen a few of that type of incident recently.
Yeah,
must be something going on.
Yeah, that's right. Something about the warmer temperatures drawing more evaporation out of the earth and creating moisture in the atmosphere that then needs to go somewhere, perhaps.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I mean, that has been reported on. I've seen a few stories about not just increasing temperature, but the impact that it has on humidity and our moisture in the air, causing a lot more of these sort of larger rain events. So more of that to come, I suspect.
Yep.
But anyway, we've got an episode a great interview, a very timely interview, I think. There's some really exciting stuff going on in Phius, which you caught up with James just recently. But before we get into that, you got some people to thank.
Indeed. So this week, our accelerator partner of the week is Stengel Engineering. So a big thank you to Stengel Engineering for making our programming possible, including the Passive House podcast. Also, a big thank you to our stakeholder partner, NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. Thank you to our founding sponsors, 475 High Performance Building Supply, Ingui Architecture, Partel, Rockwell North America, and Zola Windows. And thanks to our champion sponsors, Bewizo, Icon Windows and Doors, Intelligent Membranes, PH Air Seal, and Source 2050.
Awesome. All right. Thank you to all of those people. And thank you also to our wonderful listeners out there. All right. So let's get into this week's episode. James Ortega, he's been on the show before, and we've definitely featured all the great work that James mentioned, but this is a really great update because there are some pretty important events coming up, which you talk about in this conversation. And we've got a bit of a jargon alert here as well. Towards the end, you mention Adorb. I think we had a bit of fun with this one before, so I had to go and look it up. Adorb cost is the annualized decarbonisation of retrofitted building cost. That's a mouthful, but I really appreciated James going into that in more plain language to describe not just what that is, but what it means in terms of cost-benefit analysis and the value of doing some upfront calculations and analysing what makes sense when it comes to do a retrofit program. So I'll let him explain that because he does a better job than I probably could. So let's jump into it. This is your chat with James Ortega from Phius.
James, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Yeah, happy to be here. Good to see you.
Yeah, likewise.
And talk to you.
Yeah, definitely. I know this is a really busy time for you all at Phius with all that's happening this month and also next month. And so I appreciate you carving out time to talk with me. It's going to be great. It's going to be fun. So actually, why don't we start? I know lots of folks who are listening know you and the work that you do, but could you start with a quick intro about your role there at Phius?
Of course. Yeah. My role for the past 5 years or so, and then even before that, 5 years before that, I've been on the certification program team for Phius. So all of the project certifications and buildings that we review and get certified go across my desk. But my current role, I'm the certification program director for Phius. So basically all of the certified projects we have come across my desk at some point. And I work with all of our wonderful CPHCs and raters and verifiers to get these projects designed and built and certified.
Yeah, which is, I think, becoming a larger and larger task as the years progress. Can you say a little bit about like the change that you've seen during your tenure there?
Of course. Yeah. So I started full-time at Phius in 2015. And at the time, we had just launched our first climate-specific passive building standard, which was trying to respond to projects in different locations, different climates, and stuff like that. And as part of that standard, we were investigating and starting to do a lot more research on larger multifamily and non-residential buildings. So Phius, Passive House Institute US, and we using the acronym. But a lot of our initial early projects were single-family homes, small duplexes, stuff like that. And since I've joined and since we've been working more and more on these projects, it's shifted quite a bit in terms of the types of projects we see. So our bread and butter really no longer is the small single family kind of custom homes that we used to see. It is much more and more multifamily buildings ranging from, low rise, 3-4 story, 20, 40 unit buildings up to 25 plus story high rises. And those are becoming much more the norm since my time of starting back, almost 10 years ago at this point.
Right. And I know I've looked at the charts and the data looking at the growth of certified square footage of Phius passive buildings. And it's, more or less looks like it's been doubling every 2 years. So you're experiencing this exponential growth curve happening. And that is likely to go completely bonkers and bananas very soon and go the hockey stick is going to really, really go vertical here, which I think brings us to this big event that's coming up for you all in Providence, Rhode Island, the Phius Pro Forum. So with that, maybe could you start by maybe describing, giving a little intro to the forum, and then I'd love for you to talk about the why, the motivation behind the forum, and why it's necessary right now, and then maybe we can get into highlights, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, of course. So the Phius Pro Forum, it's the first one we've done like this. In the past, we've always done conferences kind of on an annual basis, which has always been our area to be able to get people information at a high level on different projects, expose more folks to passive building in general, and really as an outreach event has been in the past what our Phius Con event has essentially been. It's a great thing that we've done in the past to get people involved and brought into the mix. The Phius Pro Forum that we're planning for this year is a little different than that. It's not necessarily getting new folks into the standard and into what passive building is. It's really more along the lines of getting folks who are in the mix right now, working on projects and having to learn and do things as they go, getting them the valuable information that they can use on a daily basis to help them get the projects that they are now in Massachusetts, for example, going to be required to get basically passive buildings created and done. And we saw this as basically a strong need, especially in the Northeast, severely driven by Massachusetts's recent adoptions for their stretch code and kind of the direction they're going with their energy requirements and all those kinds of things that are involved with that. But this is really for our practitioners and for the people who are actively having to do these projects and getting them very specific and take-homeable information for them to go to the Pro Forum, get the information they need to do a project, go back to their desk, work on that project and be successful and bring those projects forward in a more efficient and basically quicker, like all of these projects are going to keep moving. And if we're going to succeed as a group on getting passive building to keep becoming in this mainstream conversation, which is super exciting for me to have seen. Phius has gotten better at getting through projects, but we need practitioners to also be confident in their skills and be able to do these things that they've bought in. Now they need to go through and execute those types of designs and work.
Yeah. And you mentioned the stretch code in Massachusetts, and that's the opt-in stretch code that requires buildings of a certain size and larger to be passive house or passive building, or there's also a thermal energy demand intensity pathway that looks like in some cases is even more demanding than passive house or passive building. And that opt-in stretch code, most of the big jurisdictions in Massachusetts are indeed opting into that stretch code. So like there are, a whole bunch of communities now where basically passive building, passive house, really strict thermal energy demand intensity will be the requirement. So we've got this massive step change that's about to happen in the community. So it makes so much sense that you all are doing this event, and the geography makes a lot of sense to be doing it, right next to Massachusetts. Providence is right there next to the border. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I would weigh in that it's right now it's basically any project or any building over 12,000 square feet is pretty much what's written into that stretch code. And yeah, it's a lot of jurisdictions, like including Boston, including some really major population hubs. So that's definitely a factor in why we chose the Northeast, and Providence happens to be a kind of a more budget friendly location, right, to do an event like this that is well within reach of all of those communities that are getting affected by this at this point.
Yeah, and for folks who are hearing about this and maybe feeling inspired to join, is there space still available for the forum? Will people be able to register still? Yeah, awesome.
Yes, awesome. Registration is definitely still open, and basically it's the 21st to the 23rd of October, so it's just in a short amount of time at this point. Right. And we basically have it open. We tried to be as friendly as we could to practitioners, knowing that we can't have a week-long event where you just dedicate a whole week and you leave work and you can't do your regular work during that time. So it's very fragmented in terms of you can register for 1 day, 2 days, or 3 days is really the goal, because we set it up such that practitioners could go to the events they really are interested in attending for that day, and then potentially next day go back to work and implement exactly what you just learned the day before. And the goal was really to set it up with flexibility in mind for folks who are actively working on any number of projects that are going on in the Northeast, because we understand people's time is valuable and people are, we're not the only ones busy, and it's because of all these other constituents and folks working on projects.
Yeah, that makes sense. So are there other highlights you want to share about the program or what's on offer?
Sure. Yeah, I'll start I'll start at the end. That's not necessarily the way you always go, but day 3 is really policy related. Is a big portion of that day is talking through with folks what is going on with the current stretch code and what things are happening. We also have our wonderful executive director, Katrin Klingenberg, is giving a great final kind of closing keynote at the end of that day. Day 2 is really dedicated to practitioners who are working on projects right now. And we have specific tracks for looking at, air sealing and the concerns related to that, hydrothermal and durability concerns with assemblies and kind of best practice things. And then also looking at it from the perspective of, building and constructability. So that day 2 is really kind of into the weeds for those practitioners working on those types of projects. And then our day 1 has a couple of pieces in it. It's probably the most in-depth nitty-gritty day in terms of like the advanced metrics. We've got a track on advanced mechanical systems that I think is going to be valuable for maybe folks who have some experience and might not need to go to like day 2. That's a little bit more for the everyday level. And the other big piece that's happening on that day 1 that I do really want to highlight is we have an entire workshop dedicated to the new Phius Revive 2024 program, which is specifically geared towards retrofit projects and is basically our newest and latest greatest amount of R&D work that went into creating a standard for retrofit projects specifically. So that Revive workshop is going to be, I hope, very heavily attended by folks working in the Northeast that are on projects that we have a lot of existing buildings in the Northeast. They're some of our oldest, and they need some love and attention, not just the new construction stuff.
Yeah, that's exciting. And what a, I mean, I know that this is a road that will continue this, and this experience probably, I certainly anticipate and certainly hope this road, this path of growth will continue. But it does feel also like this is a moment of where you all can do some celebration. I mean, this is kind of the culmination of over a decade of development and hard work by you all at Phius to get to this place where you've laid the groundwork to help make this policy happen in Massachusetts. And now you're, doing the work that needs to happen to make sure that it all succeeds. So I hope that you all get a chance. Maybe Kat will help with that to kind of like take stock and celebrate this moment, because it is truly like it's going to blow out of the water any growth charts that have happened up until now.
Certainly, yeah, and I would say we've had so many proverbial fires in the stokes in the fires, whatever that saying is, that we've been working on this from a lot of different angles for a long time, and it does feel really good to kind of see this first batch of projects going, hey, we were required to do this, and we've got teams who are ready and willing to do these projects. Is really, really quite rewarding and exciting. And we are grateful. We're happy that this first state is kind of going this direction. And we definitely have eyes on, okay, now we need them to succeed so that this can be the roadmap for the next state, and then the next domino and the next domino. And we can continue to see, the benefits of passive building keep spreading, and people really see it as a cost-effective solution to what they're trying to do on these types of projects, and really reducing the energy footprint of these different locations. So, I think we're excited that it's here. I think we're really already trying to look forward on how do we make it a success? How do we take this to the next level and have even bigger aspirations for where else it can go?
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned the Revive standard, so that's maybe a good segue or pivot to the other things that have been going on and are ongoing for you all at Phius. And could you talk a little bit about, and I know, and we'll include a link in show notes for previous conversations with you all about Revive, but maybe just take a moment to highlight what is there, because there was a little bit of a paradigm shift with this certification, which I think is really exciting. Could you describe that? Like, what is it? How is it different from the certifications that have come before it?
Of course. So the new construction program and the Phius certification program as a whole, for since I've been around, has been really concentrating on 3 levels when doing passive building. It's looked at trying to do, cost optimization was a big factor, trying to make sure that these buildings can actually be constructed and built. You can design whatever you want, but if the money's not there, it's not going to happen. So that was a major factor in what we'd originally set up for our program. Climate was another piece that we brought in as well. And then after that, those 2 main pieces, we started to build in more nuances like occupant density, dwelling
Right.
unit density, project size, kind of ratios of how compact buildings are, all those kind of pieces, to really bring out our standard into looking at basically boiling it down to how do we reduce the amount of annual heating and cooling go into a building? How do we reduce the size of the mechanical systems that need to meet those targets, those heating and cooling targets? And then with a back burner piece, not a back burner, but a major factor of you have to do that in a way that's not going to sacrifice the long-term durability of the building. So air tightness is a critical factor in that. So that's another kind of piece of the standard. And then the last part is that as a whole, we want the building overall to use less energy, right? So we've got a source energy target of trying to make sure that the buildings don't use too much energy as a whole. All of those things are specific targets we had for the projects. And as a result of setting these kind of low load buildings, low energy use buildings, we would get as a benefit long-term resiliency, long-term cost savings. You would get comfort, durability, all of those kind of things, which we really see as valuable benefits to passive building. What the Revive standard has done is basically look to set targets on those benefits we had before. So before we had a benefit of if there's a power outage, you've designed your building to be low load. It's got, a reduced mechanical system size. You're going to be able to ride through with passive conservation measures as a result of meeting those other targets. The Revive standard said, what if we just designed it for resiliency to start with? What if we just looked at it from 7-day outage in the winter, 7-day outage in the summer? Are you going to be able to survive in that building and make sure that people are safe and not, in danger? So we basically set up a completely different modeling program, a completely different method of analyzing to meet those requirements. So all of the passive envelope pieces of the building, so determining how much insulation you want to go into the building, determining where you want to spend your money on windows versus air sealing, all of those factors for a retrofit project are really created by meeting this outage period of, can you survive a 7-day outage in the winter? Can you survive a 7-day outage in the summer? So rather than designing to meet some annual loads and peak demands, we are looking more at just survive this resilience period and the building will take care of itself the rest of the year. On the other end of the spectrum, so we still don't want the building to use more energy over the course of the year, right? You could always throw energy at a problem, which we don't want to do. We've been doing that for 50 years. In this scenario, we now have a new metric. Rather than looking at the source energy over the lifespan of the building, we are looking more specifically at what our senior scientist Graham Wright has coined an ADORB
Yeah.
cost. So it's kind of related back to cost, carbon, and what the building is going to do over its lifespan. And that ADORB cost is looking at basically, if you looked at this retrofit project and say you're looking at a townhouse or something like that, which I think is a very common type of architecture. I'm thinking Philadelphia has a ton of these, right? Like in the Northeast, there's lots of existing, brick, nice walk-up townhomes. You've got a townhome project that uninsulated walls. It's got a old, beat up mechanical system, very leaky, double pane, double hung windows, all that kind of stuff. The goal of ADORB is that if you were going to go retrofit that building and you're going to do an upfront cost of carbon to replace the windows, replace the mechanical system, get better insulation, air seal it, all of that kind of stuff. It looks at it at a holistic level of, I'm putting upfront carbon into this, not only from the materials, but I'm having to invest with contractors, employees, people who are working on this are going to have to do some upfront carbon just to be able to do the work. We want to make sure that if you did nothing to that building for the next 70 years and just let it operational carbon run, you're going to use a certain amount of energy over the rest of the lifespan of that building. We want to make sure that if we retrofit it and fix it and make it better, that it's going to survive those resiliency goals that we set and then not use more energy from a total carbon perspective than it would have if you did nothing to the building to start with. So that's really what it boils down to. It's looking at not only annualized cost and energy use, but also upfront carbon and knowing that, okay, I did replace the mechanical system. I'm going to have to probably do that every 25 years for the next 70 years or so, because mechanical systems wear out, they need maintenance, all that kind of stuff. So it's a much more holistic look at what the buildings are going to end up using over their lifespan, rather than just looking at operational carbon is really the piece that's specifically different in the new Revive program.
Yeah, which I think is just so smart, given that I think that's the burning question that people have around retrofits is, does it make, if you're making this intervention, are you, I think that people have there's, concern that the upfront carbon could potentially outweigh the operational carbon savings. So there's that. And I mean, I think that basically what we want from our buildings is as we look at the climate crisis, is that we want them to use less carbon or emit fewer greenhouse gas emissions, and also make us more resilient to the impacts of climate change. And so that's, Revive is focused on those two really important imperatives that we face. So I think that's what's so cool about it. And how is that?
Exactly.
How's the rollout going? What's the kind of update?
Yep, it's going good. So we have officially launched both the Revive 2024 program, which is for the retrofits, at the same time basically that we launched the new 2024 new construction program, which is still continuing for regular new construction projects. Both of those are officially out as of September 1st. So we've got people have had about a month to start looking at, okay, I've got a current building in the program. Do I want to move forward to the next step? And we have them, they're out. We've got a new certification guidebook, which is, I'm hoping, is our latest and greatest yet. It was a lot of effort to get this one rolled out, especially trying to incorporate the new Revive program into that so that we can get people instruction, make sure it's clear and stuff. But yeah, they're both out. They're ready for people to start adopting. We are going to basically, like every iteration of our standard in the past, we have kind of this 1-year opt-in window where folks can still kind of analyze the projects they're currently working on and see, does it make sense from the perspective of, I've told my client we're doing this route,
right,
this new thing has come out, we need to analyze if we want to make the change or not. But yeah, so we're going to basically 2025 in September is when the 2021 standard will kind of phase out and we'll go full over to 2024. So we've got, plenty of time for project teams still to analyze both. But I really do encourage folks to look hard at the 2024 program, both for retrofits and for new construction. We've done a, heck of a lot of work on the back end to try to make these, as always, the best versions we can of the new standards that we're launching, kind of in time with our 3-year cycle that we try to do, just to try to align a little bit with codes and what other folks are working on the side in terms of just regular updates to try to keep it fresh and relevant.
What are some of the key updates in the 2024 standard?
Yeah, so the biggest one by far, the one we spent the most time on, was definitely the Revive program.
Yeah.
So that's a whole new look at the whole thing to start with, and has been, kind of a long time coming. We're really excited about it. But on the new construction program, we do have a couple of key updates. So the biggest factors are related to high-rise and kind of mid-rise multifamily projects. We aligned some of our mechanical airflow rates with the new International Mechanical Code that came out in 2021. So we actually did end up re-optimizing and rerunning our baseline modeling for the high-rise and mid-rise projects that we had done originally. And this was in effect from the request of constituents. We've got a lot of teams who work in jurisdictions where the International Mechanical Code for 2021 has come out. Their jurisdiction is requiring that. And it was a pretty substantial increase on continuous ventilation rates, specifically in kitchens and bathrooms. It effectively doubled the continuous ventilation rate for kitchens, and it increased the bathroom rate by about 25% as well. So we saw that as a pretty big factor. You increase your ventilation rate, that's almost immediate losses, right, on a project, especially when you're looking at a, 20-story building that's all studio apartments or something like that. Like you're effectively almost doubling the ventilation rate of that type of a project. And because the new construction program is kind of these targets based on your building size and occupant density and all those pieces, the targets were based on lower airflow rates. So we updated those airflow rates, and our targets are now based on kind of this newest version of the IMC so that we can kind of align with what those requirements would be. So that was a pretty major factor and has a pretty big impact impact, especially on the high-rise and the mid-rise buildings. From a non-targets perspective, so from like a, not necessarily from the back end, but from the front end, we've also aligned with the newest versions of some of our co-requisite programs that we've required for a long time. So Energy Star, Indoor Air Plus, and Zero Energy Ready Homes, which are 3 government programs that we've historically always aligned with and kind of tried to align with the newest versions. We are doing that as well for Phius 2024 for the new construction stuff. So version 2 of Zero Energy Ready Homes is now going to be required across the board, which is kind of exciting because that program, their version 2 release, included a multifamily specific version and a single family. Up to this point, it was basically all of it was kind of in the single family realm, basically buildings under 5 stories. So that's a pretty substantial change, which is good. And I think it's really going to be helpful because ZRH concentrated a lot on updating their multifamily program, which I think is good. Energy Star, I believe now is in version 1.4 for the multifamily, for Energy Star multifamily new construction. And I think it's on version 3.2 for single family. So we're also having those pieces aligned. And then the last one, Indoor Air Plus, we are still using their version 1 revision 4 because when I was launching the 2024 program, they had come out with version 2 like 2 weeks before we launched. And we're like, well, we're not going to have time to pull that in yet. But we will see that version 2 of Indoor Air Plus come out. Probably will align when Zero Energy Ready Homes aligns with that program, which looks like it'll probably be around 2026 when they officially kind of move over to that new version. But yeah, those are some big changes from the rater and verifier end. So the on-site quality assurance professionals are likely aware of those program changes, but 2024 is already aligning with them. And with that alignment, we've also done a bit of a number on our back-end quality assurance process checking for the raters and verifiers. We've got a completely new version of the quality assurance workbooks that raters and verifiers might be familiar with. And the main goal was to make them less redundant with the co-requisite programs. So we've taken out a ton of, we were trying to make those workbooks initially back when we first made them for the 2018 and 2021 standards. They were trying to be a one-stop shop for all of the requirements for Zero Energy Ready Homes and our requirements. The problem inevitably with that is maintenance and keeping up with that.
Sure. Yeah.
We're not part of the Energy Star, brain trust of when they want to change something. So if they change something, we have to review it and then accept that change kind of thing. So the goal really was to make the workbooks be as specific as possible and rely solely on those co-requisite programs to divvy out their requirements and reduce as much as we could the redundant work that raters and verifiers had to do where they said, I checked the insulation, and they have to say that in 4 different documents, right? Like we tried to eliminate that type of stuff. So I think the newest versions of those quality assurance workbooks are going to be really beneficial for teams that are using the 2024 standard and really hopefully make it more straightforward for the on-site quality assurance.
Yeah. Sheesh, you guys have been busy. That's a massive amount of work, sounds like.
We've been busy. But I mean, our team has grown a lot since I started in 2015. So many hands make light work or lighter work. Maybe.
Right. Well, that's, all that sounds very smart. So as we're sitting here in October, next month is a big month for Phius. Can you tell us about Green Build?
Yes, I can. So Phius is going to be at Greenbuild. We've got a whole track, which is really, really exciting. Yeah. I mean, it's a gigantic event in general. And for them to agree with us to be able to kind of cater and figure out a track of presenters, it's, I believe Greenbuild's the 12th through the 15th, or maybe the 11th through the 15th of November next.
12th through 15th at the Philadelphia Convention Center. Yeah.
At the Philadelphia Convention Center. Exactly. And I think it's going to be very exciting to be able to have a lot of our experienced and, super intelligent workers and consultants who have worked on projects for a long time be able to potentially reach a much larger audience than they have in the past with some of the amazing work they've done. So we've got an entire track. I'm really excited to see a lot of folks that are going to be kind of ringing the bell for passive building in general in front of kind of a group like Green Build. So yeah, I'm excited. We're going to be there. I'll be there for sure. My coworker Al and I have a presentation where we're talking about kind of successful projects that we've seen over time and kind of basically what's the starter pack for like a passive building, depending on the climate and the size and stuff like that. We've gotten quite a bit of data that we tried to collect from the slew of projects we've worked on over the years. And yeah, I know there's plenty of other presenters that are going to be there talking about their specific projects or talking about how their method has evolved with passive building in general. So I think it's going to be a really good thing for, a fresh audience that we haven't necessarily had a good time getting everybody involved. It's been a little bit static and staggered, and this is a good opportunity to talk to a much wider audience.
Yeah, definitely. And you have the Phius Pro Forum where you're going to go deep with a lot of practitioners who are already engaged with Passive House, and then Green Build. You have this chance to share this knowledge and approach with people who care about buildings, they care about climate, but maybe don't yet really get it with passive building. So it's just a really great opportunity, I think. So I can't wait. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys there. It's going to be great.
For sure. Yeah. We'll definitely have to meet up.
Yeah, definitely. So this is, again, thank you. I know you have a million things going on, so I appreciate you carving out the time. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up and you can get back to your task list?
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I've got anything else off the top. I mean, I think really I would love to see people at the Pro Forum if you're already like a CPHC or a builder or rater or whatever your role is on a project. It'd be great to see at the Pro Forum. I think it'll be a great usage point, especially for practitioners who are working on these projects right now. Even if you can carve out a day of your time, I think it'd be really valuable for those folks. And then, yeah, if you haven't had a chance yet to look at the new Phius 2024 standard, definitely check out the new guidebook. That got a complete makeover, facelift and reorganization. So if you have comments of, stuff you thought would be there that was missing or anything like that, please reach out to, contact us and we'll be sure to look through that. But yeah, I'm excited for both. We got a really busy end of the year coming up, and then 2025 is just going to be skyrocketing.
Yeah.
It's going to be great.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and folks can go to phius.org, so phius.org to access those resources and sign up for the Pro Forum and all that good stuff. James, thanks so much. I really appreciate it, and great work. Yeah, it's super cool to see what's going on right now.
That was James Ortega from Phius. He looks after the certification, and he's a busy man, Zach, but going to get even busier by the sound of it.
Indeed. They are surfing a big wave right now. We all are, but they're on the surfboard ahead of the rest of us. I don't this metaphor. I'm speaking from a place of ignorance, so that's about as far as I can go. I've never surfed.
They're on a very fast jet ski, I think.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. But I want to do a bit of a shout out to the state of Massachusetts, because they're doing some pretty incredible stuff, which is coming to fruition, but it's been in play for some time. So when we look into the code changes that are taking place, well, there was a code change that's starting to really kick in on the ground now, but it's a journey that started to be implemented back in 2009, with the sort of voluntary measures and the availability of their stretch energy code. And they are the first state in North America to require or have some requirement to be above the general code, which is not easy to do in a lot of jurisdictions. And they are really pushing ahead with that, and then that's having this downstream impact. I know that Phius has been involved in the background with helping get that going, but it's going to have quite a phenomenal change to the whole industry. And also, if you look, reading through or skimming through some of the documentation from Massachusetts State, it's not just about building envelope. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there about electrification, getting solar ready. It's all sort of pushing towards net zero or low energy, looking at electric infrastructure around vehicle charging. So there's lots of other stuff in there, but it explicitly talks about Passive House as being a compliance pathway for achieving that stretch energy code. So pretty exciting stuff, Zach.
Indeed. And also, we should give a shout out to Hank Keating, who has been a citizen advocate and activist around this for years and years, and helped organize a campaign to make comments to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that specifically talked about Passive House, and to really be pretty tireless in advocating for Passive House as a approach to, decarbonizing buildings, making them resilient, all that stuff. And so that, he played a key role, Bev Craig and the Clean Energy Center, the folks at Mass Save. I mean, it's a really great, varied cast of characters who've helped achieve this. And it's like, maybe I could take a moment and just like share a couple of numbers to get to kind of give a sense of what we're looking at in terms of uptake there. Because so to date, Phius, by the end of 2023, Phius had certified 5.5 million square feet of passive buildings in North America. So, and this year, they're on track, it looks like, probably to design certify 4 million square feet more. As of August, Mass Save had 272 projects in the docket pursuing Passive House or passive building, because the code is both PHI and Phius projects. Those 272 projects total 20,661 units and 22,629,692 square feet of projects. Now, the caveat is that these are pursuing Passive House, and it's through the incentive program. Not all of them will come to fruition, but we're jumping from just several months ago having 5.5 million square feet of Phius passive buildings certified to now looking at potentially as many as 22 million square feet in the docket in Massachusetts. And that's before this adoption of Massachusetts opt-in stretch code. So we have had this, as I mentioned in the conversation with James, we've been seeing this every 2 years, the doubling of square footage. So this exponential curve, but it is really going to go just straight up. And so it's obviously so important then to train up, and very critical timing to have the Phius Pro Forum happening in Providence, so that the local industry can get ready for what's coming.
Yeah, if that's not a good incentive to check out that Pro Forum, I don't know what is. I mean, you say that's a bit of that's work that is scheduled or on the books, not yet certified. But I mean, that's when architects are needed, and designers, and people
point.
doing woofy calculations, and all that work that a lot of our audience are involved at that, or need to be involved at that early stage. So it's going to be a really busy time. And then, of course, we also, you mentioned training. It's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out, because we've talked a lot before about just the need to increase the capability of the hard skills and the builders and the people putting buildings together, which I know is ramping up, and I think really exciting to see, and such a great opportunity as well for the whole industry, because we've all seen this before when builders get to work on a passive house, and they get to enjoy a whole nother level of mastery and craftsmanship of putting those buildings together, and then seeing the performance and seeing how it all works and looks after people in a much better way. So it's a really exciting change to see. And then, of course, there's hopefully the ripple effect when other states start looking at what's going on in Massachusetts and say, hey, we want a bit of that action as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's already happening. I was having a conversation with somebody at the city of Denver the other day, and they're emulating the incentive structure that Mass Save and Mass CEC kind of pioneered, and so that'll be great. Like I'd love to see the city of Seattle then emulate the city of Denver, and can start really taking off.
Get a bit of West Coast, East Coast.
That's right. And I think that one of the cool things, having been part of this community now for over a decade, is just like there's passive house is a known quantity. Passive houses, I think in the early days, maybe it was a little fringe. It's becoming completely mainstream now.
Well, when it's written into literally written into a state's energy code, it's pretty hard to ignore.
Yeah, exactly.
James mentioned Revive amongst all the other things he's got going on at the moment. Really pleased to get a mention and a bit of an update of that. I think most people will be familiar with that, but what's the sort of top level summary of Revive, Zach?
Well, I think I think James does a good job of summarizing that, but it's the focus on kind of the carbon impact of an intervention. Make sure that you're looking at the upfront carbon as well as the operational carbon, and that you are doing no harm with that at the very basic level, doing no harm, and not, basically we want to make sure that we're not inadvertently shooting ourselves in the foot by creating a bunch of upfront carbon that doesn't get paid off by the operational carbon emission savings, right? And so I think that's one, and then two, that it's all about resilience. And I just think that makes so much sense, and it is driven home every time there's the latest climate impact and evidence of the climate crisis rears its head. Is we need to take care of people inside buildings, and so that focus on is it passively survivable in the winter, and is it and in the summer? Those you combine that with the focus on carbon, and you have the two pieces of the two kind of fundamental things we need to do with buildings, which is to slash greenhouse gas emissions and make them more resilient.
Yeah, it's kind of, in some ways it's a bit like thinking about insurance or life insurance. It's a scary thing. No one really wants to think about the worst case scenario until you have to think about the worst case scenario, and then you wish you had thought about it. And so having that built in to say, in the location that I'm in and the likely extreme conditions that might come, whether that's summer or winter, it could be any type of event, would I be able to survive in place for a few days if there was no power?
Yeah.
And you've got places that reach very cold temperatures, even places like Texas that reach very cold temperatures.
Right.
You literally had that when Texas had snow and people were suddenly stuck without power.
Yeah.
Similarly, people are getting more used to facing extreme heat temperatures in Australia, having brownouts, blackouts in hot climates when everyone's trying to air condition at the same time, and suddenly the grid can't handle it and the power goes out, or a tree falls on a power line somewhere and it causes a mass outage right when it's needed the most. That concept of survivability, it does seem extreme, I guess, when you're choosing taps and thinking about paint colors and decorating the interior. But like I said, it's one of those things that you don't want to be left wishing you had thought more about it if you get into the situation where you absolutely need it. And the reality is that more people are likely to need that. So combining all those three seems like a bit of a daunting task when you're saying, it was enough just to focus on energy efficiency. Now you're also saying we've got to worry about the upfront energy that's going into creating that energy efficiency, and we have to also think about how the building is going to do without being connected to anything. But I guess that's the value of passive houses. It can assist with all three of those and make that challenge achievable.
Yeah, and I think that the shift in a little bit with Revive is that it's first carbon and resilience, and
Yeah,
efficiency ends up being a tool to reach the operational carbon goals,
yeah,
and a
right.
and a and a an inherent piece of making a building passively survivable, because you're creating a really thermally robust building envelope, which is also
Yeah,
energy efficient. So
yeah,
yeah, it's really
yeah.
interesting. Really interesting.
That's a really good point. So it's just that sort of bottom line, what's the main objective, and set that boundary first, and then saying, okay, well, how can we also do that while maintaining the lowest possible operational that's suited to that particular climate zone as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think we're going to have to put a bunch of links in the show notes for this episode. We've got quite a lot going on. James covered off the Pro Forum very well. That's coming up in a couple of weeks' time, is it?
Yeah, that's
It's
right.
coming up fast.
Yep.
And then, of course, Green Build, which you mentioned as well, which is going to be pretty massive as well. Great that James is going to be presenting a bit during that event, but I should probably let you talk about upcoming events. Zach, you
Yeah,
got the details there?
well, we're up and running every Wednesday with Passive House Accelerator Live, and we also have been doing a lot of Passive House component spotlights on Thursdays. So the lives happen at noon Eastern on Wednesdays, and the component spotlights happen on at noon Eastern on Thursdays, and not Thursdays all the way throughout the year, but right now we have quite a few. So check those out as well. On Friday, October 18th, we have a half day virtual conference, Reimagine Buildings, How To Decarb. So this is just a few days before the Phius Pro Forum, and it's going to look into operational carbon, embodied carbon, electrification, clean energy, equitable access to these buildings, so affordability, and essentially do these TED Talk style how-to presentations by a bunch of luminaries in high performance building and zero carbon building practice. So we hope you'll join us for that. And we're also launching the Reimagine Buildings Collective, which is our membership community that brings together building professionals who are ready to step up and tackle climate change, so that we can create the healthiest buildings with the smallest footprint, deliver them cost effectively, and as headache free as possible, be able to sell their benefits so they actually get built, and make a good living while doing it. So we're really excited about the collective, and we're onboarding staff right now, and Passive House Accelerator Live co-hosts and Passive House podcast co-hosts. And then in the coming days, we're going to be doing a soft launch that's open to everybody in our community. So if you're listening, you're invited to join us. Go to reimaginebuildings.com to get more information about that. But we'll do a more kind of formal launch at the Reimagine Buildings How To Decarb conference as well. So lots of fun stuff coming.
Awesome. Lots and lots of stuff. Be sure to check out the Passive House Accelerator homepage, and if you're not subscribed, then subscribe to the newsletter so you get updates for those events and information as it comes out, because there is a lot going on as we barrel on towards the end of 2024. Great stuff. Thanks for that, Zach. Really good to hear from James and the team again, and we'll be back again next week on the Passive House podcast.